All right, the annual UN summit known as COP29 kicks off in Azerbaijan. The conference is where nearly 200 countries gather for 2 weeks to work on strategies to slow global warming. Of course, the presidential election in this country will have a big impact on the talks there going forward. CBS News national environmental correspondent David Schechter is here in Studio 55 with me. Good to see you.
Thanks
in
for
New York.
having me in the lair. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very cool to have you here because normally you're on the road. So let's first, I was asking you this during the break. I think the first question people will have is, wait, isn't Azerbaijan like one of the major oil producers? And why so then would they decide to have something that is clearly about protecting the environment in a country that, for better or for worse, is polluting the environment?
Total disconnect. Like, why is it an oil-producing country? It's sort of just based on the UN rules about where these conferences are. And so this one had to be in Eastern Europe. But Vladimir Putin said it can't be in a NATO country.
Right.
So it ends up being in Azerbaijan, which is a country that's sort of friendly to Russia, friendly to NATO, sort of in the middle, but a huge oil-producing state, the second time in a row. Next year it will be, though, in Brazil, in the Amazon.
So that's important because that part of Brazil is really facing dire threats from the rise of global temperatures. So let's talk about how this election here in the United States may affect what happens not just with that COP29, but just with climate policy around the world.
Huge. I mean, we're at a tipping point for climate change, right? So we're about to finish what will be the warmest year on record. We have the nations of the world that have committed to making changes, reducing the carbon emissions, have not met their promises. Some have done a pretty good job, including the U.S. in the last few years, but really missing our targets. Then we got these wildfires that you were talking about. We got extreme fire, drought. We have all these issues that are funneled by climate change, and a president now incoming who says climate change is a hoax. You bring all that to Azerbaijan, where all the nations of the world are gathering, and they say, well, where is the leadership from the U.S.? Should we be listening to the Biden administration that's here and presenting new ideas about how this country can cut its emissions? Or is this all going to just get cut into 2025 when a new president comes in who's really dubious of all these things?
So, David, one question that I have is, we saw during the first Trump administration governors of states and even mayors of some big cities deciding themselves to work diligently on the issue of climate change. Is that what we might potentially see again, where perhaps on a national level, the United States isn't leading the world, but in a particular state or in a particular city where there is a mayor or a governor who's inclined to work with those
Totally right on that. I mean, so a lot of concern that U.S. vacating its position of leadership around the world. Yeah. But like in Washington State, they just passed a really important climate resolution. There's ones on other ballots around the country, and cities have really taken the lead in this country to come up with policies to make their cities more resilient, to reduce carbon emissions from cities, and think about the future. So cities and states in this country will continue to lead the way. There are so many things that are happening now in progress, money being spent on huge things like battery plants, or an electric grid across the country to charge all of our electric vehicles that really can't be stopped. They are moving forward. This economy is transitioning to a green economy. So there will be things that the President Trump-elect will say, we're not doing this anymore. I'm taking us out of the Paris Accord. We're going to make a lot of changes. But many things will continue on, like you say.
So is there a role for Elon Musk to play in all this?
I think he will be one person that we'll be watching so closely, right? He has benefits directly from climate legislation. He cares a lot about climate change. There's a $7,500 credit for all electric vehicles in this country from the United States government for new purchasers. And he'd like to keep that in place. Now he's got the president's ear, who is called climate change a hoax.
Right.
What kind of conversations are they having? Will that change the president's approach on things? I think we need to watch that really closely, because it seems like it's at least in the realm of the possible that he's got his ear. What's he going to do about it?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all develops. And I'm also curious to see if the United States cedes that role, that lead role in climate change, what country takes the place. And you told me earlier.
I think it's China.
It's going to be China.
And China's economy, 40% of China's economy its GDP is green technology, green energy transition vehicles. That's huge, 40% of their economy. If the United States retrenches and says, we're not going to provide subsidies for electric vehicles anymore and things like that, and we're not going to lead on the world stage, China would love to come into that space, I would think, and say, well, we'd love to sell our electric vehicles to the United States. Of course, tariffs then come in.
Sure.
Or our panels that we're making, our solar panels.
Right.
It's really not just a policy decision. It's really an economic decision. Like, this is happening. This transition is happening. Who's going to benefit?
Really fascinating. Great to have you here in New York.
Great
man.
to be here.
Thanks
I
for
love it
coming
in
by.
here.
Come back anytime. We'd love to have you.